Hey guys, what's going on and welcome to today's video for Legends of Runeterra. Spoiler season is continuing. We have a lot of cards too. We got a lot of cards today. We got two slides of cards today to look at. No champions though, so there's that. But instead of just rambling, because there's a lot of stuff to go through, let's get right into the cards. Why not? So, let's look at these cards first. There are some pretty good cards, in my opinion, that have been revealed. Let's start on the left as we always do. First card we have here, a Bilgewater card. We got Bone Skewer. Bone Skewer is a 2-mana fast spell that says an ally strikes an enemy. Then it moves to the top of your deck. So, right away, you will draw some comparisons to single combat. Single combat is a good card. It's, I believe, the second most played card in Demacia at the time of recording this video, right behind Sharpside, I believe. How is this compared to single combat? It's different. I feel like, sure, your opponent's unit is not striking your unit. That's great. That is a really nice thing. It's one of the reasons why things like Bloody Business and I guess Concerted Strike are so good. Concerted Strike is just a great card in general, in all honesty. Now, the downside is you are putting the card that struck back on your deck. So let's say you fail and your Bone Skewer doesn't actually kill the enemy unit. You basically just played a 2-mana, put a unit on top of your deck. Put your unit on top, an allied unit on top of your deck. That's a very low floor for this card. Now, maybe there will be some synergy with Pike is what people are guessing with the card. There's also a very high floor with the card too. If you use this on a unit that has a good summon ability, a play ability, whatever. And then that way you can get another playability. The one card I can think of right away when I first saw this card is Devourer of the Depths, the 4-mana 4/4, technically a 7/7 when you're deep, that, well, eats an enemy unit that has less health than them. So you use the Devourer, you summon it, you eat an enemy unit, then you Bone Skewer to kill another thing. The Devourer goes on top of your deck, you replay Devourer, and then you eat another unit. That seems good, but the problem with that is how consistent is that and how reliable is that? Not very. Still, though, I think the card is good because it's in Bilgewater. Bilgewater kind of lacks this type of removal, like the big-ish removal. Sure, there are a couple of cards like that 7-mana deal. I think it's 7 damage. Toss 3 card. Sunken Cost is also a thing. But those cards all suck, in all honesty. They have some decent, like, small-ish removal, like Make It Rain, which is not that great. Parlay, but their removal suite is not that great. So this might see play just because Bilgewater's removal suite is not amazing. Now, speaking of Bilgewater and the removal, the next card is pretty sweet. Monster Harpoon. It is a 6-mana fast spell that says deal 5 to a unit. And then Plunder, I cost 3 less. Very simple card. Very good card in my opinion. I don't know if it's good, but I think it is playable in the right decks. Basically decks playing Powder Monkeys. In other words, I think Sejuani Gangplank likes this card. I don't think Sejuani Gangplank is a good deck at the moment. I think it's a very mediocre deck. Very, very bad for the meta. But I do see it every now and again, mostly probably just as a more for fun deck, but it does still do occasionally decently when it actually gets to do what it wants to do. 3 mana to deal 5 to anything, well, besides Nexus, is a pretty good cost. The problem is, if you don't activate Plunder, it's 6 mana to deal 5 to anything, which is terrible. That's awful. So, I feel like you're going to want to be able to activate Plunder reliably. Not every turn necessarily, but maybe like every other turn. And if your idea of activating Plunder is combat, then you might be in a bit of a problem because then you're taking away a lot of the strength of it being a fast spell. Because then you'll have to do combat and then activate the Plunder and then cast Monster Harpoon out of combat, which then you're just pretty much playing a slow spell. So, do you pair this up with, I don't know, like Ember Maidens, Ice Shards, Warning Shots, um, Blighted Ravines, I guess? I guess, Leviathan, Swain's Boat can also activate Plunder. Like, in other words, what are good ways of activating Plunder before combat, in other words, that aren't a bad way to activate Plunder? I guess like TF Red card, maybe? I don't think that's a good idea to use TF Red card to activate Monster Harpoon. Still, though, similar to Bone Skewer, I think this card is going to be played specifically because it's in Bilgewater, and Bilgewater kind of lacks this mid to late game removal suite. They usually would have to use their secondary region to compensate for their lack of that kind of removal, usually like Noxus or maybe something else. Anyway, next card. It is a Freljord card. 4 mana burst speed spells. Succumb to the cold. I think this card is bad. Frostbite an enemy, summon a Frozen Thrall. Frozen Thralls are those 1 mana landmarks that have a countdown of 8 that summon the 8/8 for 8 with Overwhelm. I don't think this card is playable and constructed. I feel like if you want the Thrall, you'd rather just play actual Frozen Thrall in your deck. Because the earlier you play Frozen Thrall, the better. And you can only really play... The earliest you can play this spell is what? Turn 3, I believe, with spell mana? Which isn't a bad turn, but that's about the latest I would like to play Frozen Thrall. And even then, it's like the kind of archetype that plays Frozen Thrall is not good. Lysandra Frozen Thrall stuff is not good. Lysandra Trundle Watcher control combo, whatever you want to call that, is good, but they don't care about their Frozen Thralls. In all honesty, I'm sure a lot of Lysandra Trundle players wish Lysandra wouldn't even summon a Frozen Thrall because it takes up board space for their Spectral Matrons and Watchers. The effect is strong. Don't get me wrong. Frostbiting an enemy, great ability. The problem is Flash Freeze exists. Flash Freeze literally also is the same thing for 3 mana to frostbite an enemy. So you're paying an extra mana purely for that Frozen Thrall. Is that worth it? In my opinion, no. Unless we get a lot of landmarks matter synergy, I don't think this card will see play at all. Maybe in Expedition, but that's because like Expedition, you'll see everything get played. Anyway, next card. Shadow Isles card. I like this card. The Wings and the Wave. 1 mana 0/1. Play me, or when you play it, it gets played as either First Wave or Last Wind, whichever you choose. First Wave is a 1 mana 0/1 that summons a Prey. Prey is the 0/1 that Fading Icon creates. Last Wind is a 1 mana 3/3 that says to play me, kill an ally. I think like Ravenous Butcher, but it actually costs mana, I guess. Is this card good? Yes. Nasus Thresh is already a good deck. Nasus Thresh probably really enjoys this card. The issue I see with this is that Nasus Thresh already has a lot of early game between things like the 1 mana Bakai, the Dune Keepers, the Cursed Keepers, the Ravenous Butchers, the Blighted Caregiver, Caretaker, the 3 mana 2/1 Tree Mommy, in other words. I'm missing one here. I feel Fading Icon. I don't think I said that one. But yeah, that's a lot of early game they're playing already. I don't know if they'll play Wings and the Wave as well on top of all that. Maybe they'll cut something in there. I don't think they will cut Ravenous Butcher because one of the strengths of Ravenous Butcher is it costs 0 mana, so you can play things like Curse Keeper on 2 and then a Ravenous Butcher as well. Don't think so. But I do think this will get played somehow in the deck because of its versatility. It's so versatile. You can get some Slay Fodder if you make a First Wave, or you can get a nice 3/3 if you make the Last Wind, which also gives you Slay synergy, and it activates Last Breath, like killing, Curse Keeper. And helping level up Thresh, I guess, as well. So, I think the card is strong. I think it will see play because, 1, it's just a good card, and 2, very versatile for a deck that's already really good. Just don't know how they will fit the card into the deck already. Next up, Buried in Ice. 9 mana slow spell. Obliterate each enemy to summon a Frozen Tomb in its place. Frozen Tombs, we know what they already are. They are the landmarks that are created from Entomb basically says like obliterate an enemy and replace it with the Frozen Tomb. And Frozen Tomb has a countdown of, I believe it's 2, and resummon an exact copy of whatever was obliterated. Basically, it's like, hey, remove this from the game for 2 turns. Now, this card's kind of nuts, in my opinion. I don't know if it'll be played because this kind of ability right now is a little expensive and a little slow. This card, in my opinion, is Ruination. It is a one-sided Ruination that also constrains your opponent's board space. So that's pretty good. It's also in Freljord, and Freljord has a lot of decent ramp too, in case you're going to be like, but streamer, it's 9 mana. Also, 9 mana is a pretty sweet spot for big things because you can hold up deny. Just another quick note. Also, I don't think this is a good thing, but there is the combo, quote unquote, of you buried in ice your opponent's stuff, their stuff comes back, and then you play Unearned Passage because those things popping out of the Frozen Tomb which should not count as normal summons or whatever Unearned Passage states. So Unearned Passage should kill them. But the reason I think this is good is one-sided one-sided Ruination. Really good card. Sure, in 2 turns they'll be back, but in those 2 turns you can do a lot of work. You can play it before play Buried in Ice before combat, clear the way for your wide or big board, getting a lot of damage. Use it like a Ruination because your opponent plays some scary stuff. Use Buried in Ice. You've bought yourself a couple of turns, and then you can get ready to answer the units and stuff when they pop back out. Love this card. I don't know exactly what kind of deck wants this, in all honesty, because is this better than Ruination? I don't necessarily know. If there is a good landmark removal spell, like maybe some kind of landmark AoE, maybe you play like Buried in Ice into some landmark removal. There's the Ionia one, the 10 mana Ionia one, which says like choose a unit and then recall all other units and landmarks, which it's not removal, but it's pseudo removal. I don't think that's a good card. Don't play that card. So yeah, lots of good cards here. Bone Skewer is sweet. Harpoon's nice. Wings and Waves is, the Wings and the Wave. I'm gonna struggle saying that name. I already know. The Wings and the Wave though is pretty sweet, pretty good. Succumb to the Cold is bad in my opinion. Buried in Ice is good on paper, but we'll have to see how it works in practice. Anyway, that's all the cards here. We have a second page of cards. We have some Demacia and Noxus cards, I believe, and some PNZ cards. Let's take a quick look at them. Beautiful. First up, Ardent Tracker. 6 mana, 3/5 with Scout. When you summon an elite, reduce my cost by 1. It is also an elite. Meh. That's what I have to say to this. Now, granted, I'm not a big fan of elites. I don't think elites are good. But I will say this is more payoff for actually playing elites. Elites, in my opinion, one of the things holding them back is the fact that there's just not enough payoff for playing elites. And you always have to be careful of these kind of cards that can cost 0 mana, as people have really learned now because of Burblefish. Is this a Burblefish? No, not in my honest opinion, but who knows? Like, if you play a couple of 0 mana scouts that are 3/5s, that's pretty scary in all honesty. Let's say the bare minimum. What is the bare minimum you will want to pay for this? For me, 4 mana. If I'm paying 4 mana for a 3/5 with Scout, that's also an elite, I guess. I'm not happy about it, but I'll accept it. And once we start to get to 3 mana, I'm actually happy. I'm like, all right, this is great. 3 mana for a 3/5 with Scout, that's pretty good. So you can, in theory, go like turn 1 Scout or turn 1 elite of some kind, turn 2 1-drop elites of another, turn 3 Ardent Tracker. I don't think that's a good curve. it sets up a nice banner man, I guess, but that's basically a dream, and I don't want to live in magical Christmas land and try and like do these extremely unlikely scenarios. Still though, I like the card. I don't think it's I think it's just barely not playable because in my opinion scouts are not playable and this deck really only go or this card only really goes into a scout deck. But I like the card. Also, of course, there's the classic iterative improvement, copy it, summon more things, and then you get like 4/6 scouts, which is kind of cute. The next Demacia card, it's Cithria. We got another Cithria, the thickest Cithria we've seen yet. This is the, I believe, fourth Cithria. And this is the most expensive and, like I said, thickest one. Cithria, Lady of Clouds. 10 mana, 10/10. Elite, like all other Cithrias are. Challenger. Pretty sweet. When I'm summoned, double other allies' power and health and grant them Challenger. So double their stats and give them Challenger. That is a huge, huge ability. It has to be. It's a 10 mana card. Is this card good? Yeah, in a vacuum, yes. In a vacuum, this card looks good. The issue, I think, with this card is, before you say it, I don't think it's going to help elites. Elites, like I said earlier, their problem is not that they don't have finishers or anything, or they don't have good cards. They have both of those. They have finishers. They have good cards. For the Fallen is a good finisher for them. This helps them, I guess, with finishers. But the problem with elites is the lack of payoff. This isn't really helping that. Cithria doesn't really care if you play elites or not. And the second thing is, let's talk about non-elite Demacia decks, Demacia midrange, because that's the kind of deck you would play Cithria Lady of Clouds in. Demacia midrange is pretty much Demacia Ionia. Think like Shen decks, maybe. There's like Zoe Aesol too, but I don't think you're gonna play Cithria Lady of Clouds in an Aurelian Soul deck. And yes, that's a mid-range deck. I know some people like to be like, oh, it's a control deck. I'm like, it's a greedy mid-range deck. I know the lines start to blur. But the other issue is, in a Demacia mid-range deck, I don't think you want Cithria. Like, yeah, sure. I can't remember the name of that card, the 5/4 with Challenger for 5 mana. That card creates an elite, if I remember correctly, when it dies. Cithria would be a pretty good elite to get off of that card. I hope I'm thinking of the right card, by the way, and I hope I'm remembering its text correctly. The problem I have with Cithria is, one, she's expensive, which makes sense because her ability is game-winning. The other issue is Demacia midrange has big finishers already, and their big finisher that they use when they want a big finisher is pretty good. It's Brightsteel formation. The 9 mana, I think its stat line is a 9/9, that gives all allied units barrier when it's summoned and when it attacks. That's a pretty good card. And compared to Cithria, a 9-drop allows you to hold up deny compared to a 10-drop. Like, you play Cithria, you're not holding up deny unless, of course, you've done some discounts. Now, of course, you can do some memes with this Cithria. You can do some, like, Vaults of Helia stuff. You can do some Spectral Matron stuff. You can do maybe some Mobilize stuff to make her cheaper. But at that point, we're starting to get into meme territory, in my opinion. So, while this is a very game-ending card, I feel like you need an even bigger board than usual compared to a board that you would need for Brightsteel formation. Plus, you're not really giving keywords. Sure, doubling the power and health is great, even if your opponent plays, say, Vengeance to remove Cithria. At least you doubled their stats and gave them Challenger. Unless they have things like Overwhelm or at least Lifesteal, it's not amazing, right? Because, like, you probably don't have that many big things. You probably have, like, maybe a couple of 2/4s, maybe a 3/5, maybe a 5/5 or a 6/6 is the biggest thing. And sure, doubling their stats and giving them Challenger is great. I still would rather play Brightsteel formation. I just think Brightsteel formation, especially if you have barrier synergy because you're playing Shen and Ionia in general, I think Brightsteel is just better. And I think it's also better because of the whole being able to hold up deny. Anyway, though, next card. Chirian Sumpworker. I have no idea how to pronounce that. It's Chirian, Kyrian, whatever. 2 mana, 1/2 elusive. When you summon another Sumpworker, obliterate me and transform allied Sumpworkers everywhere into Sumpworks posses. A Sumpwork posse is a 2 mana, 4/2 elusive that says attack, deal 1 to enemies and the enemy nexus. We can see the skill all there on the right. It is called Circuit Breaker. So even though there's no skill symbol on the attack text, we can assume it is a skill because it's there on the right. How do you evaluate this card? I have no idea. Like, yes, a 2 mana 4/2 elusive is nuts, especially when it basically red cards on attack. And each of them red card on attack. So if you get 2 Sumpwork posses on the board, well, you're basically now you're pretty much like, I guess you're technically like Gangplank using a Gangplank ability with powder, kind of. The issue I think is, again, how consistent is this? If you play, like, let's say you play the Chirian Sumpworker, 2 mana, 1/2 elusive, that is very understated. Your opponent will just beat you down and not even care, or they'll use one of their many removals to either just kill it, like a Mystic Shot or whatever. The thing is, like, on the other side of the table, does it make your opponent scared and throw a lot of removal at basically what is a 2 mana 1/2 elusive for fear of you playing a second one? Now, we can only play what, 3 copies of a card in a deck, so the dream is what? Turn 2 Chirian Sumpworker, turn 3 Chirian Sumpworker? You would probably keep 2 Chirian Sumpworkers in a Chirian Sumpworker deck in your opening hand, I'd assume. The problem is that the first one gets obliterated, and the second one turns into a posse. You only have 1 more in the deck, so you probably want a way to shuffle in more copies into the deck, or at least create more copies. So how do you do that? Counterfeit copies, Parade Electro Rig, those both kind of suck. Iterative improvement is probably the best way to make another copy of the posse. And the other problem with the posse, in my opinion, is its stat line, while it's very aggressive, which is what you kind of want from an aggressive elusive card, it dies to Mystic Shot. I know, dies to Mystic Shot argument, and people were saying that about LeBlanc and Zoe, and those 2 cards are really played, but still, it is a consideration that you have to, well, consider. Doesn't fight well is another thing. Dying to pretty much a unit plus sharp sight's going to be a little bit of a problem. Still, though, I think there's going to be some madman out there who will build some kind of crazy Chirian Sumpworker deck. We're going to see someone out there with like 4, 5, 6 Sumpworks posses on the board, basically attacking in and destroying enemy boards, kind of like a Nivea. But I don't think, in terms of competitiveness, I don't think this is going to be a top tier deck. At least with what we've seen so far. Maybe there will be more synergy and it will just click, but I don't think so as is. The next card, the Adaptatron 3000, is a 1 mana 1/3 that says when you summon a tech, we share keywords. Interesting. Techs, if you don't know what techs are the Heimerdinger turrets. So all of those things, the X1s and the T hexes. From reading the card and reading its wording, I'd assume that if the Adaptatron itself has a keyword, let's say like the Adaptatron has Challenger, and then you summon the 3 mana turret, the Fearsome turret, the 3/1 with Fearsome. I'd assume that means the Adaptatron would then get Fearsome as well, because they're sharing it. But then the Fearsome turret would get Challenger because the Adaptatron itself had Challenger as well. I assume since it says we share the keywords, though, that means the buffs aren't permanent buffs. So if the Fearsome turret is on the field and then the opponent kills the Fearsome turret, does that mean the Adaptatron loses Fearsome? I'd assume yes. So, in my opinion, not a good card. Well, it's a fun card. Fun, good, good and fun can be a thing. Competitive, I don't think so. And the reason for that is that Heimerdinger himself is there's production surge, I guess, to create turrets, but Heimerdinger is the main way of creating turrets, which are the tech cards. And Heimerdinger kind of sucks. He just dies so easily, and I just don't see this card being viable. Because, well, Heimerdinger himself is not viable, in my opinion. Like, sure, there are, like, some Heimerdinger Aphelios decks. I've seen Heimerdinger Vi trying to make a comeback. Heimerdinger Zoe, Heimerdinger Victor. But all those decks don't have good win rates, and I don't think the Adaptatron is the card to save Heimerdinger. I'm sorry, Adaptatron. You're very cute, though. Also, the other thing is, like, it's already really tough just to protect Heimerdinger from dying. Now you have the other problem of protecting the Adaptatron as well. So now you've got two problems. You've got two units that are very big, important engines that you want to protect from your opponent's challengers, kill spells, etc., etc. I'll try it out, though. It seems like a fun card, so I'll definitely play this card. I don't have high hopes for it, but it seems fun. The next card, Incisive Tactician. 8 mana, 4/5. Reputation, I cost 6. When I'm summoned, rally. If it weren't for Shunpo, I would like this card. The problem is, well, Shunpo exists. I think Shunpo, if any Noxus deck that wants this ability would rather just play Shunpo, in my opinion. One, it's cheaper by 3 mana. Sure, even with a Reputation trigger, it's still cheaper by 1. 2, of course, it's a spell, so you can use spell mana. That's always nice. And it's got a slow speed Mystic Shot attached to it, in other words. I guess it can't hit face. But yeah, you can also use it as mediocre removal. What does the Tactician do? Nothing, really. Like, he's slow, and he rallies. Doesn't have a keyword himself. Doesn't have, like, Overwhelm, or Tough, or Challenger, or whatever. And all he does is rally. There are a lot of rally effects in the game. And the ones that are played are cheap ones, and Shunpo, I guess. Basically, Relentless Pursuit, Golden Aegis, and Shunpo are the 3 rally effects that are played. I'm not including things like Scouts, of course. Like Scout unit plus, I don't know, Cataclysm. I'm not going to include that. There is also the one card in Bilgewater, the Citrus Courier. I can't remember its stat line. It's like, I want to say it's actually a 6 mana 3/5, I think. That basically says plunder, heal your units and your Nexus for 3 health, and then rally. That card sees a little bit of play, but very, very minimal play, mostly because Bilgewater has kind of sucked for a while. And this Incisive Tactician is similar to that card, but you have to put in the work to make it cheap as well. There's also, I forgot the name of this card. There's also the dragon, like in Demacia, there's that Behold a Dragon and Rally card at 6 mana, which is not even played even in decks that play Shyvana because, again, it's too slow, and most of those decks would rather just play Golden Aegis anyway if they want to rally. So I just don't think this card's gonna see play. Like, compared to the Dragon Rally card, whose name I can't remember, and Citrus Courier, this is more in line with the Dragon Rally card in that it just rallies. Citrus Courier at least heals you, so that's nice, and it heals your unit, so that's nice, but even then, it's still not played that much. It's just a little too much mana for the effect. And again, Noxus players have Shunpo if they want this kind of effect, so I think you'd rather just play Shunpo. And we see that getting played in things like Marauders. Maybe Marauders play this over Shunpo, but I don't think so. I think they would still prefer Shunpo over this. Because Marauders, I think, will be able to activate Reputation really quickly because they play LeBlanc and Ash, and then the Marauders themselves might help activate Reputation. But even then, I'm not sure. Now, the next card, speaking of Reputation, Thrashing Snapper. 1 mana, 2/1. When an enemy blocks me, give me +3/+0 this round. No keywords, no anything. So I've seen some people say this card is nuts. I don't agree because a lot of people were saying how this card is nuts because it gets you Reputation quickly. The problem with that is reputation at the moment isn't that amazing. Like, there's only really one reputation card that's good, and that's Whispered Words. Sure, there are cards that care about doing damage, like LeBlanc and I guess Severe, like damage through units, but those aren't really reputation. And sure, there's other reputation cards like Blackthorn, Black Rose Spy, the 2-mana 3/2 that basically clones it's the strongest unit that struck that turn. There's Sigil of Malice, but again, like the fact that I'm struggling thinking of reputation cards should show you how mediocre some of these reputation cards are. If we get more reputation cards that are good, not like Incisive Tactician, maybe Thrashing Snapper gets played. I think you need to care about reputation if you want to play Thrashing Snapper, because if you are an aggro deck, you're not going to play this card, in my opinion. You have that 1-mana 2/1 that basically pings your opponent's Nexus when you attack, and you also have Legion Rearguard as aggro cards if you want to play something aggro, because it's only getting the +3/+0 when it gets blocked. It doesn't have Overwhelm. Maybe you could do something cute by giving it Overwhelm with Might, but that's a lot of effort for not much payoff, in my opinion. I guess like maybe with Kato can give this thing Overwhelm, but again, I'd rather just play other 1-drops if I'm an aggro deck. So I think you really need to care about reputation if you want to play Thrashing Snapper. Outside of that, aggro decks have better cards, and in my opinion, reputation outside of Whispered Words is just not good enough to want to actively try and go for reputation really, really early, which is why you would play Thrashing Snapper, in my opinion. Anyway, though, this is a long video. Those are all the cards, though. Lots of cards today. Hopefully, tomorrow. We got no Targon or Ionia cards. Hopefully, tomorrow we get some. I would love to see... Honestly, I'll take either. Give me Ionia, give me Targon. I love both of those regions. Preferably Aurelia, please. Because I really like Ionia, and Ionia has kind of been in the dumpster for a while. But that's it for today. Lots of cool cards, though. Lots of these cards I could see being played. Some of them are really fun, too, for the Brewers. I'm sure they will love them. Lots of potential here. But yeah, if you have any ideas for some of these cards that I might not have talked about, I'd love to hear your ideas down in the comments below. Maybe there's a card you think that I said is great and you think it's bad, or maybe there's a card that I said is terrible and you think it is good. I'd love to hear your opinion. Anyway, though, I hope you enjoyed the video in general. If you did, please be sure to leave a like or a comment down below. It always helps me out, of course. And if you want to keep up with the content, you can always subscribe to the channel. Anyway, though, you can also check me out on Twitch TV over at twitch.tv/Zenit, and I play Legends of Runeterra pretty much every single day. But anyway, though, with that all said and done, thank you all again once more for watching this video. And until I see you guys in the next one, bye.